And we are live. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Coach Mo Murphy podcast, hosted by yours truly, Mo Murphy. And there's no need to really have a big introduction to my guest because today, this is a special episode with, the guy that has wrote this college football season out, one of many that we have written together. And what we have not witnessed is what we witnessed yesterday, and it's my man Jeff Hunt in the building, in here to be on the other side on a Sunday of a side that we've never been on while doing this show. And that's the side of Ohio State beating Michigan. Now, Jeff, I've been doing this. I've known you since 2020. I've been doing this podcast since 2020. So to put it in perspective, Ohio State hasn't beat Michigan since I've started podcasting, since I've started putting content out to the little bit of viewership that I get. Ohio State has not won this game. And so there's 1,000 reasons why, they didn't win. There's 1,000 reasons why Michigan went on a 4-game win streak, but they did it nonetheless. And Ohio State last year obviously kind of put a Band-Aid over it by winning the national championship, and creates the conversation of like, well, would I take losing to Michigan every year if that meant that I'm going to win a national championship? So that became a conversation. And even coming into this game, people from the outside, like non-Ohio State people, were talking about as if this game was, fans would really rather win this game than win the national championship. And I'm like, no, I don't think. Are there fans that would? Yes. But I think in the scenario, when you paint this game, like, just because we lose this game doesn't guarantee us a national championship. But winning this game, what it did guarantee us was 12-0, beating Michigan, in a berth in the Big Ten championship. That's what winning that game guarantees us. Yeah. Losing to Michigan and being the standard of putting the Band-Aid over it is winning a national championship. That's a tough standard to live to year in and year out if you're going to continue the losing streak against Michigan. So just it being a conversation, I don't think people would rather win a national championship than beat Michigan, but people would rather have done it the way Michigan did it when they went undefeated, beat Ohio State, won the Big Ten championship, and won the national championship. Like, you leave no bars, you leave nobody like Michigan to come in and have their say-so of them being one of your 2 losses or whatever it may be, and you don't always get a clear get back like you did against Oregon. Like, where, okay, you beat us in the regular season and we got to pop you in the playoffs. So I don't want to lose the Michigan game, but yes, if you guaranteed me that, hey, you're going to lose yesterday, but I promise you a national championship, then of course I would have took the loss yesterday, but that's never a guarantee after this game.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's silly. Like, and I'm one that, like, if it's an either or, I'm taking the national championship every time. And luckily, they had a pretty good conversation about this. I want a real shout out to College Game Day this year. Outside of, like, I don't know, the kind of worn out stuff that McAfee does, like, as far as hyping up the crowd and stuff, I'm kind of over that. But they've had some really good conversations. I don't know if it's not being tied to Corso and kind of propping him up and, keeping things rolling. But they've had some really good conversations this year. Nick Saban, obviously, when he chimes in, I want to think, and he brought it up. They straight up asked, they said, Nick, your rival or your championship? And he didn't even blink. He's like, championship. And Reese Davis said, Nick, how many times do people ask you about 2017 losing to Auburn? He said, nobody, because they won the championship, so nobody. But what I think what I do realize, because it's been so long and I've let myself kind of fall into the, like, this game doesn't matter anymore. You know it. You and Jay, we're in a great chat. Probably one of the best Buckeye chats in the nation. I bet people should pay to be in that Buckeye chat with Jay from Locked On. And, I'm always like, it is what it is, but it's not the same. Here's what is the same. It still feels just as good. And now that I look back, I'm like, really what Ohio State fans are saying is the feeling of beating Michigan feels just as good as it always did. The importance may not be the same. Nothing the same. National championship and beating Michigan are just 2 different feelings. And we felt them both in the last 350 some odd days. And it's been what I claim the best 12 months in the history of Ohio State football. And I mean that, as far as we've won 4 playoff games and beat Michigan. I mean, there's only one thing left to do. I'm sure you're going to talk about it. But I do want to say to the people that I've been, kind of pushing back for basically, not 6 years, but 2 or 3 years. I get it, because the feeling felt the same. I text the same people I always text, friends. First thing I called was my son. My grandson now has a Michigan victory. He's your son gets his first Michigan victory. Like, and that's the stuff that really does matter. So I need to quit downplaying the importance of the game, even though things have changed. So it was an awesome day. I felt great. I probably had one too many celebration beverages, but it is what it is. I think the best part of it to me is that we did it in the worst possible fashion. We went, they wanted cold, they wanted snow, just like back in 22, and they got it. And we kicked their butt, especially in the second half. Physically, we're better. Offensively, we're better, and we did it all in about as bad of weather, really, outside of like that Minnesota-Wisconsin game yesterday. About as bad of weather as you're going to play in November in the Big Ten. And Ohio State didn't flinch. The players didn't look flinched. Julian Sain, the California boy, went from surfer to snowboarder. Just a great day and a great shut 'em up day. The highlight of the game was Michigan thinking that we were going to be concerned about planting a stupid flag because that's how they see the world. They seem more prepared to protect their emblem at center field after the game than they were about playing the game. So that made me feel good that they're so delusional and petty, and just great stuff. Just great stuff out of Ohio State. They showed me a lot. They showed the country a lot. I now believe that they deserve the #1 ranking regardless because of playing in the elements and different things. So, good day for Ohio State. Good day for college football overall yesterday, I thought.
Yeah, and here's the thing. You can't tell me that like that game didn't mean everything to the Michigan and the Ohio State players.
Yeah.
Like one thing people aren't realizing, like Michigan was playing for a playoff spot. Like,
oh yeah.
Like they win that game. They make it a tough conversation. They put a lot of pressure on a lot of teams to look very impressive. Whether it be yesterday, whether it have been Friday.
And at that point could have still went to the conference championship game. They didn't know they weren't eliminated yet. They had all that on the line.
Oregon hadn't beat Washington. And so maybe that puts a different pressure on Oregon. Like, maybe it changes the outcome. So like, and Ohio State was just playing for obviously like pride and to go back to the Big Ten championship. Like if Ohio State lost and then Oregon won, like they ended up winning, then Oregon goes back to the Big Ten championship. Ohio State has this amazing season where it seems like the buildup was for this Michigan game just to not, get it done. And so that's the thing, though. I think the snow kind of slowed down, kind of really ruined, I think, what Ryan Day planned on doing. I mean, the first snap of the game when we got the ball was a deep shot to Carnell Tate. Like, we sent a message early that we're going to try and get the ball to our playmakers. And the reason why I say the snow damaged that is because when we were up 24-9, if it was 50 degrees and sunny, I think we put our foot on their throats and we let it launch and let it ride and we just run the score up. But with it snowing, the field being slick, you don't want to take chances with guys who were questionable to coming into the game like Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate. You can't forget about the bigger picture all because of this game. That's the one thing that you can't get lost in this game is that it isn't the game of all games. Like,
right.
When you don't want to, like you say, you don't want to give up a couple sprained ankles in order to win this game. So it stopped us from really dominating in the second half offensively. But Ryan Day, in his post-game press conference, it told me this meant the world to him. It was a stress reliever. It was a heavy weight off his shoulders after winning a national championship. Like you would think if anybody felt any more secure coming into this game, it would be a head coach who's defending a national championship coming into this game 11-0. And I think because of that, Ryan Day felt this was more pressure than anything, and it's on the road. And that's a tough pressure to have as a head coach. Like, is everybody fully satisfied with this national championship? Like, I think us beating Michigan kind of makes everybody go back to reappreciating the national championship. Like, because you got that monkey off your back. Not that he hadn't beat Michigan, but he only beat Michigan, once? He's only beat Michigan one time as a head coach. So he has a losing record. That's not something that you want to have in this game while not delivering multiple national championships. You were on the brink of people wanting you fired depending on what the playoff run looked like. You ended up winning a national championship. Ohio State or any other top tier program or any program really ever is going to fire their coach the year after winning a national championship, no matter how hot their seat was prior to. But you will be in full blown evaluation. And I think Ryan Day understood that. And he came out against Texas and he was like, I'm just going to win this game. And then from there on out, I like my chances in every other game leading up to that. Not thinking that Penn State would implode. Not thinking that Michigan would be 1 or 2 steps, below Ohio State. Like, he didn't plan for any of that, but what he did plan for is each week handling business no matter what it takes. And it was a really smart route in doing it. And it got you to this point in you had to win this game. Like, everything was that you were calling the dogs out. Carnell Tate looked as healthy as he would look, especially for a guy who missed the past 2 to 3 games. Yeah. So for him to come out there and be the dominant force that he was, like, tells me they're good to go and ready to go for the Big Ten championship. They're good to go and ready to go. This Ohio State team is now primed and ready to make a back-to-back national championship run. And I feel 1,000 times more confident after beating Michigan than I do heading into this game. And I'm not going to lie, this year, the way we were playing, the way we were dominating, and the way the rest of the country has looked, I've carried this arrogance about myself. Like, oh, this is about to be an easy back-to-back national championship. Like, I think it's going to be easier this year than last year, in my opinion. And call me crazy, but nobody has looked as good as Ohio State. I guess the team that has, we get to play this week. And we'll talk about that here in a second. But just overall, like, all of that is what the Michigan game did for Ryan Day. Like, you could tell he was just very appreciative and relieved. And, like, this is for a lot of people, like his wife, his kids, they don't have to get the threats and the social media. Like,
I think
love from there.
A lot of that stuff is what it is, but I do think that I compared this to the Tiger Slam. When Tiger finally finished the Grand Slam, he won all 4 in a row, but he didn't win them in the calendar year, but it counts just as much. And I really do think, like you said, this is the bookend on the national championship year. You can add it to that. It's done. You know what I mean? It was handled. To me, I feel completely satisfied with getting the national championship and then beating Michigan. It doesn't bother me at all. And on the way, we went through Penn State again. We went through Texas again. So again, the best 12 months in the history of, of Ohio State football. And they've had some really good 12 months in the history of Ohio State football. This is, just in a calendar year, we've beat Tennessee, we've beat Texas twice, we've beat Notre Dame.
Beat Oregon.
We beat Oregon. We beat Michigan. We beat Penn State. All these things, like, we've done all this, not lost in 6? I think it's up to 16 games now. Like, it's been real. It's
January 1st.
Yeah. If anybody else is on this kind of run, and I'm not saying Ohio State's not getting credit. They're the number 1 team in the country, and everybody agrees. But just imagine if this is Alabama had done it. If Notre Dame was on this kind of run, like, it would just be, we would only be talking about the what is. But I will say another thing that this game allows is Ryan Day some slack. The truth is, if Ryan Day, I think we expect him to win a playoff game, but it's going to be tough. Like, the first round if they get the first seed, is going to be tough. But if they do lose, it's not going to be the chance of him slow playing it and then losing to Michigan would be a complete loss of a season. Like, it would have been a complete waste of a season to not blow everybody out and then lose to Michigan. They didn't. And what I like about the Michigan game, they handled Michigan just like they should have. Michigan never looked like they should have, been on the field with them. And they never could have there was never a chance of a comeback. Their quarterback had 0 stats. It was completely quiet. Like, they just walked through them with confidence. And so it was really impressive. So, yeah, shout out to Ryan Day for knowing his team, knowing the path, not listening to what Jeff had to say, not listening to what a lot of us had to say, and just slow playing this whole season. And now I truly believe that he is ready for what's next, because the good thing about Ohio State, not everybody on the team, but in general, they know what's happening. They know every type of game that they can play. They know every type of if they got to do it in the dome, if they got to do it outside, if all these things, like, they've seen it. They've got the experience. The coaching staff is not overwhelmed. Nothing's going to be new. So, yeah, I like it. I like Ohio State's chances. I'm not as confident as you. I just because football's football, and I've seen a lot. I've seen Georgia, when they look really good. I've seen Alabama at times look really good. I don't know if Texas can make it, but this new version of Texas is way better than the ones that Ohio State beat. Like, all these things. So, I'm more confident than I was last year for obvious reasons, but There's a lot of good teams. This is going to be the best 12-team playoff out of the two. It's going to be the best, and it's probably going to get better next year because I think they're going to clean some stuff up. We might talk about that later and get some better teams in there and stuff like that. So, yeah, but Ohio State, they did so far. They've done exactly what they had to do. Great game, good, just a real fun game, fulfilling game. Shout out to Brutus, for putting the stamp on it. That was a great moment. As someone that has a friend that was Brutus for an amount of time, those guys, and what they do in that costume and everything is really special to me. So that was a great move by him. That'll live in history. So just a lot of fun. Knowing we have a quarterback, we don't have another CJ Stroud. We got a dude that can do whatever, wherever. All pluses for Ohio State yesterday. Really checked a lot of boxes.
Yeah, I think it was very important that to see Julian saying to have high praise for him after his second throw was an interception in that game. And obviously, like, to me though, this is what everybody wanted to see. Remember, I immediately text you and Jay. I was like, this is what everybody wanted to see. They wanted to see Ohio State get punched in the mouth. They wanted to see them make a mistake. So we're going to see from here on out what this team is made of. Like, to me, they set themselves up to be the type of team to convince everybody that they are ready to win a national championship. They are as good as advertised. They're as good as the committee has told you all year, because the committee has told you they're the number one team all year. And I think here's what I do want to talk about, Jeff. I think I want to go into Saturday. I think they put a stamp on it by beating Indiana. Now, I know there's a lot of people who think this game doesn't matter and like neither team benefits from winning this game and this, that, and the other. But like, I think with the way Ryan Day sounded about beating Michigan, like winning the Big Ten championship will be just as special. These guys that got their gold pants, who are seniors, and to cap it off winning a Big Ten championship, and they know they have a high chance in their locker room. You probably can't tell them that it's not their national championship to lose. So everything else is just a green check mark in the way. And so to tell me that, like I told you, I really think this year the mission is for Ryan Day to come for it all. Like, I still left doubt while winning a national championship. There's still stuff hanging over me. I lost the game to Oregon, but I got my get back, so that one doesn't weigh as much on me. I lost to Michigan. So there's the Michigan fans that there's the importance of that game that gets to hang over my head, all while going to win a national championship. I told you, I don't think Ryan Day was fully satisfied. Like, I think he knew it was a breath of fresh air and it bought him some time, but he still had some things to handle, and not beating Michigan or not winning a Big Ten championship since 2019, 2020, since COVID is just not the standard. And like I said, the national championship put a Band-Aid over what could have been a problem had he not won this game. But now he wins this game. He's 12-0, and we're sitting in this situation. It's not like going into this Michigan game more often than not. We were 10-1, 11-0 going into this game. It was, if we win, we're playing in the Big Ten championship. If we lose, we're not. And we've lost for 4 years in a row. So it's not like Ryan Day has had us in any off type of seasons. We've been a playoff team, now that it's expanded. And that's another thing. Going 10-2, it left for everybody to say, well, had they not expanded the playoffs, like Ohio State doesn't win it. Ohio State doesn't even get in. So now to do it 12-0, and let's just do it the right way. Just don't lose in anybody in our way. We'll go 16-0. 17-0, whatever it is, 16-0, and be the undefeated national champions. Like, I think that's what he's going for. I've said that from the beginning of the season. I think the way he's carried this offense and the pace of play has been to be able to make sure we are as healthy as possible and ready to go, because we're going to put ourselves in all of these positions. Yeah. Beat Michigan and Ann Arbor, to play in the Big Ten championship game. I understand the bye week and everything, and everybody how they would rather not play this game than play this game, but there's still a bye week in the first round of the playoffs, so they're going to play this game, and they're still not going to play for another 3 weeks. They're going to get the same amount of 3 weeks off. They get to see, and looking at the way the bracket is projected, it's not as lopsided as it was 3 weeks ago. Like, you don't really benefit being the 1 seed, 2 seed, 3 seed, 4 seed like anymore. So you might, if you're going to play in this game, you might as well win it. There is no benefit one way or the other.
Yeah, I know. I agree with all that. So, like, what you say about the team, we and my wife were talking about today. As much as I just want to be clear, I hate these conference championship games. The point isn't that the teams shouldn't care or whatever. Like I agree. Like, the team is going to Indianapolis. They are going to try to win the game. I think everything you said is correct. I simply say it's dumb that they have to play it for nothing. Like, we could, get on my soapbox here. We could be using next week as a wild card weekend for college football, and all these teams that we're going to be complaining about next week, whether it's Texas, whether it's Alabama, of course, Vanderbilt, all these teams we're going to be complaining about next week, they could be beating themselves up next week. They could be playing to get into the college football playoff, and we would care as a nation. Like, imagine next week we get Texas, Vanderbilt to continue on in the playoffs. Like, I think we care about the outcome of that game more than we care about the Big Ten, more than the average person cares about the Big Ten championship. Now, as far as Ryan Day and the crew, of course they want to beat Indiana, and they want to win. This crew wants to win every game that they step on the field, but not, and especially after yesterday, I 100% believe, not for a second do I think that they don't want to annihilate everybody in front of them, and that's fine. And as long as we're sitting here, Sunday morning saying, "Hey, everybody's healthy. I can't wait to see who we play in the playoffs," I'm fine with it. I just don't like it because as a college football fan, I think next weekend is a waste of a weekend that we could really figure. Like, Alabama shouldn't have to play next week. So, like, Alabama, if they lose the SEC championship game, is going to have to drop down into the argument of 3 lost teams, even though they had to play a senseless extra game. And then the committee's got to decide Alabama, Texas, Vanderbilt. Like, Vanderbilt's record loss column is going to look better. But then if you're going to tell me, well, Alabama's in regardless of whether they win or lose, why play the game? That's all my point is about those games. It's not about how much the teams care. I know Ryan Day is not going to throw the game to change he's going to try to beat Indiana, and he's going to enjoy it, and I'm going to enjoy it if it happens. The good news is if it doesn't, we're still in the playoffs, probably still have a bye. Just my whole problem with the conference thing is that it punishes the really good teams. Like, Notre Dame is in, nothing bad can happen to them, and they're on a break right now. And they're basically they're probably going to get a home game, and they're going to beat the snot out of somebody because they're probably going to get the ACC or Group of 5 or something like that. And I just think that's a giant advantage. That's a giant reward for a team that lost its first 2 games of the season, and Ohio State and Indiana have to play each other. That's all I mean about the game. But you're right about the approach that the Buckeyes will take, and I firmly believe now that they would try to win that game and try to beat up Indiana and really put a statement on they're back. They're restoring order in the Big Ten. I 100% believe that they don't want to see Oregon and Indiana win 2 Big Ten championship games before they do. So I agree with what you say about it. Just that's my whole thing about the conference is that it only punishes the great teams. It's stupid.
And you know who would agree with you, Jeff? Is Texas Tech and BYU fans, because in this Big 12 championship game, these 2 teams are 11-1, Jeff. And if the rankings came out, when the rankings come out Tuesday, both of these teams will be ranked in the top 12. So going into Saturday, they would be a playoff team if they don't have to play the game against each other. Now, I think there's 2 scenarios that come out of that game. Obviously, if BYU wins, they're in. Now, I think that's the simplest scenario to have 2 teams from the Big 12, because I think if BYU wins, obviously they're in for winning the Big 12. Texas Tech already pretty much annihilated BYU. You know it's hard to beat a team twice. All of those would be factors, and Texas Tech, because it would be a split series. So one of Texas Tech's losses is to a team in a conference championship that they already beat and wouldn't have to play. I think they would factor all that. I don't think BYU would get the same nod.
No, BYU has to win. From a
talent standpoint, I think just people are intrigued about how Texas Tech would fare against some of these SEC schools and some of these Big Ten schools. Not necessarily we want to see them against Ohio State and Alabama, but like we want to see a Texas Tech versus Oklahoma or Texas Tech versus Vanderbilt or something. Like, are these guys that spent this $30 million like the Ohio States and the Oregons? Like, they're not the only ones. They're just in that group with the Ohio States and the Oregons of, spending top tier dollar on having a talented roster. Like, can they play at this level? And so that's what you want to see for Texas Tech. And so I think them losing that game in a close one gets them in. I don't think BYU gets the same nod.
I think Texas
losses will be you lost to Texas Tech twice. If you can't beat Texas Tech and we don't feel as strong about them being national title contenders or first round bye recipients, then we don't really think you can fare with the rest of the field in the playoffs.
Yeah, you can't.
That's how it'll be looked at.
Unless they're being like a 2-loss BYU is not getting in over what I said the other night when Texas beat Texas A&M. I looked over and told my wife, I said that just eliminated a lot of teams that had any chance. Like I think it's like Texas set the bar like here, like nobody worse than Texas is getting in. And so I think it eliminated like a conversation about BYU because if Texas has 4 losses, then BYU, even with 2 losses, has an argument because at least it's similar. But I think Texas eliminated like BYU with 2 losses. I think they eliminated some of the other teams. Vanderbilt, I can't decide yet if they've eliminated Vanderbilt because Texas just beat Vanderbilt. I think Texas has eliminated Vanderbilt. I think if it comes down to those two, you got to take Texas because you can't. Okay, they lost to the number 1 team in the country. That's what everybody's going to say. And they just beat Texas A&M, and it looked pretty good doing it. So I think that Texas eliminated Vanderbilt, BYU, but Texas Tech's in.
But listen to me on this though, Jeff. Like everything that you just said contradicts another argument though. Like, so the committee is going to sit in this war room and we're going to be upset at them at whatever decision they come with. But because you said like Texas, probably if Texas and Vandy becomes a conversation, you're taking Texas over Vandy because Texas beat Vandy. So why wouldn't Notre Dame and Miami simply be a conversation? And Miami's not playing in a conference championship game. Miami beat them. I know Texas beat Vanderbilt more current than that, but the fact of the matter is head-to-head is going to matter in some of these conversations, but it's not going to matter in others. And that's why I find that part of the conversation crazy because it is going to matter, and that will be why you justify putting Texas in over Vanderbilt. Texas's brand.
And now
they beat them.
That being said, I don't think Texas gets in over Miami though. So I think they're going to get off the hook with Miami and Notre Dame. I think Miami might be the last team in. I'm simply saying that Texas eliminated they eliminated any conversation about a team that's equal or less than them. So like Texas is the standard. Now Texas may be the second team out. And I think the committee is going to get off easy by putting Miami in. I think Miami just had a really
Miami got screwed. You know where I think they got screwed? Because here's the thing. Either Duke or Virginia is going to win the ACC. And with that, that means Duke or Virginia. If Duke wins, we will have a 5-loss team playing in the college football playoff by default. I do not see the committee sitting in there. I understand every conversation for Miami, but by default, I do not see the committee sitting in there saying this conference with a 5-loss conference champ deserves 2 teams in. Especially, I think then at that conversation, if I'm BYU, I deserve a spot over Miami. If I lose to Texas Tech, put it in perspective. If Duke wins a 5-loss team, 1-year conference, and if you're arguing to put Miami in, you're putting 2 teams from that conference. And that I understand that Miami, they went 10-2 and but the fact of the matter is you didn't handle business to win a conference that a 5-loss team finagled their way into playing in and winning. I think you get penalized for that.
I think a little bit, but I think
should be a little bit the fact that it's a 10-2 Virginia, you don't win a tiebreaker over, and a 5-loss, a 7-5 Duke, because you don't win a tiebreaker. They only got 2 conference losses and you don't win a tiebreaker over them. That's 2 teams ahead of you in the ACC already in your own conference.
What the ACC and the Big 12 have done is essentially stolen, or not the Big 12 as much, but like if BYU wins, that is your chaos scenario because you got to boot. You got Alabama's getting booted or whoever loses. Not Georgia probably won't, but let's say you're going to have to decide to boot a really good team. So BYU wins, and let's say Alabama and BYU wins. Here's your chaos scenario because now you got to boot Miami, probably Notre Dame. If Kiffin leaves, you might have to think about booting Ole Miss. Now, and whoever wins the ACC is taking a spot. And both of those teams aren't getting in. So whoever wins, I'm just giving them a spot. But that's still, instead of it, like you said, instead of it being a good team like Miami that deserves it, now they're taking a spot. You got the group of 5 is going to take a spot. So you only got 10 teams that can get in. If BYU wins, now you've really only got 9 good teams. So now's when you got to start deciding between whoever loses the conference, championship game, the SEC, both Big Ten teams are in. That's not a concern. But I think Alabama has a ton to play for if BYU wins earlier in the day. Like they got to be real scared because I think they're. But also, like if BYU wins, there's any argument for Texas, any argument for Vanderbilt, any argument probably for Miami. Like it kills all of those arguments. And here's what I don't like. When these conference championship, and this is another thing I hate about these conference championship games. I mean, in all actuality, the smart thing would be for Texas Tech to not play their full game and have BYU win because they get paid, because two teams that get in from the conference, they get a rest, and they got a weaker team in the field. I don't think Texas Tech would do that because you're risking it, but unless they get blown out, they're not getting left out. And then the Big 12 gets paid, and you're cutting out a good team. So I think that the biggest fans of Texas Tech right now are Alabama, Notre Dame, and Miami. They really need Texas Tech to keep BYU out of this, or it's going to be a mess.
Yeah, and you know what's crazy out of all of this too, Jeff, is like this conversation became insane Friday night when Texas beat Texas A&M. That's when all of the chaotic scenarios started coming about, because conversation was to try and find ways for this 3-loss Texas team to be a playoff team. Now, I want to start by saying this. I'm not fully against where Texas fans are coming from as far as being a playoff team. Now, I'm against their cop-out of their explanation of if we didn't, and it's me being an Ohio State fan, but the 14-7 loss to Ohio State is not the reason why you will not go to the playoffs if you don't go. If things don't shake your way for a 3-loss team to get in. That loss to Florida on the road will be the reason why you won't go into the playoffs. Yeah. If you were 10-2 with a loss to Ohio State on the road by 7, the number 1 team in the country that remained that since beating you, and yeah, you got blown out by Georgia, but a blowout loss to Georgia, and you're 10-2, Texas is in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Now, what Texas fans are trying to do is they are trying to paint it where if we didn't play Ohio State, we still could have lost to Florida, and we could have lost to Georgia, and we'd be sitting at 10-2. Sure, I get that. So don't schedule Ohio State, or just don't, because if you were 10-2,
no, they're right though.
Have it, but they are right.
They're
but
right.
10-2 sitting here having a conversation about about being in the SEC championship.
I know, but
won't lose to Florida.
But they're totally right though, because
they're not being held accountable.
Okay, what about last year though? Like the only reason that Ohio State got in, they didn't have to worry about that early season loss. I mean, Ohio State just proved this theory: lose 2 conference games and still get in, no problem. And they didn't have to worry. Like I see what Texas is saying is I agree with. And I think the worst thing that happened Friday night is that every team in the country is like, why would we schedule anybody good that we don't have to? Because these freaking committee, and Mo, you're going to hear me say it, I said it for 5 years in the network, are still looking at the stupid loss column, and they cannot get past it. And it's killing college football because they cannot open their minds up and say, hey, a 7-point loss to Ohio State is still better than beating nobody from nowhere. Now, as far as Texas fans, you're right. You can't lose to a down Florida team and then complain. But we just saw Ohio State win a national championship and lose to a 5-loss Michigan team. And the only reason they got a chance because they didn't have another loss. Like Ohio State got their second chance last year and won the title. And I think this Texas team is good enough to win, is good enough to compete for a title. And they may not get a chance to because they, with a brand new quarterback, and I know Ohio State did the same thing, but they had a team scheduled that they could lose to. So I see their argument about we should, like, in retrospect.
But you only make that argument when you lose. Like,
well, sure.
When you only make that argument when you lose, like on the losing side of it, because
I think what they're saying is they're better than the teams ahead of them, but they can't get past them. But it's because they can't get past them because of the loss column. They just can't get past them.
Maybe, but you lost to Florida. Like, and that's where the 2 losses would still exist if you beat Florida. Like, you're talking about you think you're clearly better than all the teams ahead of you because you beat Vanderbilt, you beat Texas A&M, and they beat somebody else that was in that top 10 previously. or still is currently in that top 10, but you lost to Florida. You got smoked by Georgia, and you did lose to Florida. So to say like we're just flat out on any given Saturday better than these teams, like, but you're not. Because we've seen you go and lose to a 4-win team. Like, and I understand, because here's my thing. Let's put it in perspective, Jeff. If this was Ohio State got the benefit of the doubt. Also, what were their 2 losses to? They had people were killing Ohio State for losing to Michigan because that was the worst Michigan team in the past few years anyway, but they lost to the number 1 team in Oregon. That was their 2 losses, was the Michigan, and it happened to be their 4th loss in a row. So there were a little more excuses. But at the end of the day, if Ohio State had 3 losses or whatever it was, and we're talking about we shouldn't have scheduled Texas, but we went and lost to freaking Wisconsin this year, who was absolutely terrible, there would be no, we're trying to make an excuse. No, you lost to Wisconsin. Forget the Texas game. Forget the Georgia game. Like, that's what they would be. Forget the Michigan game. You lost to Wisconsin. And they got 4 wins. They finished with 4 wins on the season.
But we
can't control our conference, but you get to play a bad team in the conference.
But you also have to talk about the win column, which they never do. Texas has way better wins than most of the teams above them, but it doesn't matter because they just look at the L column. The wins do not matter until it's even, and it's not right. Texas has every argument to say we beat Oklahoma. We just beat Texas. Texas is going to beat 3 playoff teams and have lost to 1, and they're not going to be in the playoffs, which is ridiculous. And what I'm saying is it's ridiculous because we're going to let Duke might get in. I don't care if you win your conference if you're as bad as Duke. No, I'm sorry.
But the only part of that is you already set the precedent for that to always be a possibility, because you said there's 4 major conferences and the winner of those conferences guaranteed get in. So the fact of you, and I do believe if you have an expanded playoff, you should get rewarded for winning your conference. Now, if you want to have another conversation about the way the ACC is trending, are we sure it's a Power 4 conference? Are we sure it's not P3? Like,
yeah, right.
That's another conversation. But because you considered it a Power 4, you got rid of the Pac-12. Yeah. This is that's always the possibility. Like I said, I felt like even if SMU had beat California last night and was playing, I'm like, this is where Miami loses any argument, because a 3-loss and a 5-loss or whatever it may be, a 2-loss and a 3-loss team are playing each other to win the conference.
Right,
if a 3-loss team wins and the 2-loss team loses, like, and then you're sitting here at 10-2 trying to make your argument, but like you didn't reach your conference championship, this, that, or the other, and spare yourself. Like, Miami could have saved themselves. There's multiple teams in their conference that had 2 losses, and every one of those teams won a tiebreaker. There was almost no scenario for Miami to play in the conference championship last night.
Is it okay? But here's, if I'm a Texas fan, here's what I say: is Miami gets to carry, beating Notre Dame, and if they get in, that's what it's going to be, because you said it. They didn't win a terrible conference. They didn't have a ton of other big wins, but they're going to have this. Oh, we beat Notre Dame, and Texas has beat 3 teams that are as good as Notre Dame, but because they played Ohio State and lost to the number 1 team in the country, game 1. They might be eliminated. So I think Texas ought to get in over Miami. I think they're clearly better.
Texas in over Miami. Like, because
I know you're telling Texas fans to shut up, but what I'm saying is I see their point. I see yours.
I do get their point, but my only thing is we're not having that conversation if you don't lose to Florida.
That's like, every team, though. We wouldn't like. We're going to have that with
losing to Missouri. We're not talking about losing to Tennessee. We're talking about like because here's the
they didn't lose to Florida last week, though. I mean,
no, but you lost to Florida, who like you lost to a team who fired their coach. Yeah. And won 4 games. That's all I'm saying. So equate that to had Ohio State lost to Penn State. Penn State won what, 4 games this year, 5 games. Yeah. Had Ohio State,
it would be the equivalent
this year. You would be like in any resume conversation. It would be like, yeah, you beat but you lost to that. That is a bad.
Well, let me tell you, if Ohio State had 3 losses, this year, they would not be in.
Well, yeah, because they didn't even play the type of schedule to have 3 losses.
That's
but what I'm saying
that's what I'm saying.
But don't lose games you're supposed to win. Like,
well,
I get it's college football on any given Saturday. I get we want to play like this it's anybody can beat anybody, but that's just not the case. Florida looked as dead in the water as possible before they played Texas. They had already lost
to
you.
Should we not give Texas any credit for beating Texas A&M?
Yes, we could give them credit, but at the same time,
we have to do what here's what I saw. I just saw Texas beat Texas A&M.
How good is Texas A&M? How good is Texas A&M though?
Well, you're right. I got to go by what I think my eyeballs and their ranking said. It might prove that they're not near as good as I thought. I'm simply saying, and I see Texas fans' point, and sadly, they're technically right to play. Michigan's done it. Michigan's done it for years. They don't schedule teams like that. Like if you look at their playoff runs, they make sure that outside of conference, they didn't schedule anybody, and that's fine. Ohio State did it last year. Ohio State didn't, went weak early season, and they were able to build wins, and save themselves to get in the playoffs last year. That being said, you're right. I mean, Texas's problem was they started the season really bad, and it looked bad. And I feel bad that I think they're a good enough team now that I wish they were in the playoffs, but it's probably too little, too late situation. I'm not sitting here going to say they're going to get robbed, but I also watched Miami play all year, and I'm like, it helps to have
Texas has an argument over a couple back end teams. So I wouldn't say, like, to me, I'm not necessarily saying, depending on I'm not necessarily saying they're not a playoff team. But what I'm saying is, even still, like, if you don't make it in your because here's the thing, the first 6 weeks happened. That has to matter.
That's fair. No,
you're the Ohio State game.
Then there's where you go back to
game, but you lost to Florida. You struggled against University of Texas El Paso, not UTSA, who's had a reputable program the past 5 to 10 years.
That's fair.
No, you lost. You not lost, but you struggled until the back half of the fourth quarter. You were playing so bad. Arch Manning dropped his nuts on a touchdown against Sam Houston because things were so bad for you the first month of the season.
True.
That him playing good against Sam Houston was people's sigh of relief and possible breakthrough of a turnaround. Just for him to follow it up by them being dead in the water and losing to Florida. Like, forget the Ohio State loss. The month after, the next 5 weeks happened, and that was struggling against Texas El Paso. That was dropping your nuts against Sam Houston, taking forever. I forget who they played after Ohio State. It was another bad team. It was a terrible team. They got they played 3 bad teams. Let's not act like they didn't play 3 FCS teams. They played them, and they didn't wipe through all of them. And then they went and lost to a bad Florida team that had lost to USF, that was historically terrible on offense. Coming into the game, they had looked like they might have had a pulse and a turnaround. They were 2-3. When they were 2-3 when they played Texas. Like, this wasn't a good team. And we say, well, they ended the season the hottest. You sound like you know who else had that argument? South Carolina last year. But we can't. South Carolina acted like the first.
That's fine. But I think what their side of I agree with you. But what their side of the argument is, we don't care about the beginning of the season. If it comes down to loss column, we do not care that Notre Dame started off 0-2. We do not care. Nobody cares because they've only lost 2 games. So nobody cares what Notre Dame did because you go to loss column. That's what Texas fans are saying, is that you're not really comparing the teams. Like Texas or Notre Dame played 2 really good teams and lost to them. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Like nobody cares. Nobody cares about Miami's losses, which are just, to me, I mean, they're as bad as Texas. I mean, but you know what I'm saying? Like, when it comes to the loss column, nobody cares about the beginning of the season, except for if you got one more loss and then they're like what you're saying. And I don't even disagree, but I think Texas' point is, and it's always been my point, is that wins are all the wins and losses are all that they really look at. So like what Texas is saying is like, I mean, we always say about Ohio State, like Ohio State ought to just go independent, get Notre Dame's schedule and go to the playoffs every year and not worry about the stupid conference championship games. Like Notre Dame's got the easiest path. All Notre Dame has to do is lose 2 games. They cannot lose next week. They look good against decent opponents, and they're in. Notre Dame's getting credit for beating what? USC, Pitt. I mean, who Notre Dame beat? And they're in.
Notre Dame hasn't really beat anybody, since the first 2 weeks of the season.
They lost to Texas A&M, who Texas beat.
I'm not a big proponent of saying that Notre Dame. Like, I don't think Notre Dame should be a lock in the playoffs either. Like, when we start to
But
get to
what I'm saying is they are. You and I both know they are.
but but I don't even know. It's not even necessarily as much resume or anything for Notre Dame as far as it is helmet sticker and the fact of
it's a loss column. And yeah, it's their helmet.
It's not even. It is that, but it's like, okay, everybody ain't gonna have 3 losses though. We have a bunch of 2-loss teams and potential soon to be 2-loss teams.
You're saying the same thing though. It's all just losses. What Texas is saying is if we played a worse team week 1, we would be in the playoffs, is all Texas is saying. And they're right. They are correct.
You played a worse team later. You played a worse team in week 5. You played a horrible team in week 5 and lost.
Yeah.
You played the team that you're asking for, the caliber of team that you're asking to play. You played the following 3 weeks.
No, you can play a way worse team than Florida week 1. These teams, well, what did the SEC play last week? I think Mercer was on the fucking schedule. Like,
Florida won 4 games. They already but Texas fans,
but I'm saying is though, like, if you don't play Ohio State, you can still lose to Florida. Like I'm not saying schedule a decent team.
Listen to me though.
Schedule a team that's not in your caliber and just stack wins.
Jeff, Texas played San Jose State, University of Texas El Paso, and Sam Houston. They played 3 FCS schools. They played 3. So everybody's saying schedule a 4th. Ohio State doesn't.
That's what the rest of the SEC does.
They did not have 4 though. Alabama at least played Wisconsin. Like, we're talking about, okay, Wisconsin wasn't Ohio State. Hey, Alabama played Wisconsin though. Like,
Ohio State could have been bad. You're right. No, that's fair.
Other teams, Georgia has Georgia Tech every year. When you talk about a non-conference game, at the end of the day, I know it's their rival, but they have Georgia Tech every year. And when Georgia Tech is good or decent or reputable like they were this year, you get to lean on that. That's your non-conference game. But I'm just saying, you played your 3 FCS schools just like everybody else. They made it like they subbed Ohio State. That Ohio State game was going to have to be, that's your cross. You have to play somebody else in the Power 4. So sure, instead of Ohio State, you should have scheduled Northwestern. Sure, yeah. But they act like they substituted
no, you're right.
Terrible team. No, everybody had you. That game is a Power 4 conference game. You have to play somebody. Last year, I forget who Ohio State played, but it wasn't nobody worth talking about. But it was another Power 4 school. Or you open up with a conference. You open up with a conference game to start the season. So
so maybe
saying don't schedule Ohio State. Schedule Northwestern. Sure,
no, you're fair. But I'm gonna amend what they're saying, and here's what they ought to be saying. Just look at the wins and let's stop worrying about the loss column. Like if it doesn't work out, if you look at the wins and you tell me Vanderbilt's better than Texas, they can go. I'm not saying you, but I'm saying universal you. If you look at the wins and you tell me that Notre Dame had a better season winning wise than Texas, then I'm good. If you tell me Miami was better, none of them were. And I think that's the frustration. I agree with what you're saying. You've kind of talked me into it. I understand what you're saying about they didn't sub out a bad team for a good team. They just happened to play a really good team. And honestly, they got a weakened version. They got a weakened version of Ohio State. But I still agree with if you really look at what they accomplished, it still comes down to they're getting punished for the loss column, even though the difference between, them and Ohio State would have beat Vanderbilt too, but Vanderbilt didn't play them. You know what I mean? Like, so I just think what Texas did puts them in an argument. Now, I don't think they should I think they're better than Miami, and I think they're better than Vanderbilt, and I think they're better than BYU right now, but it is what it is.
But I'm just saying, because they make it that and that's my only thing.
What you're saying.
They make it like they substituted Ohio State as opposed to we could play Norfolk State and Michael Vick. No, but you could have did what Tennessee did. They opened up the season against Syracuse. Okay, we have to play somebody else from another conference, and we're in the SEC. Okay, we're Alabama. We'll go on the road to Wisconsin. That's fine. We're not going to play Ohio State. We're not going to play Penn State. We're not going to play Michigan. We're not going to play Oregon. We're not going to play USC. We'll go play Wisconsin. That's cool. Like, and Ohio State agreed to the same terms and put the same possible things on the line. Now, everybody else will say, well, they don't have to play Georgia and Florida and blah, and Alabama and all this.
And they're right.
They're right, but also
the Big Ten was not good. The Ohio State schedule was not good.
Big Ten was bad this year. in every few years, the Big Ten does shake where if you don't play the 3 other good teams in the Big Ten, you had a bad schedule. I'm not arguing that fact. But also we say like, oh, this is this gauntlet. One of your losses is to Florida. Texas A&M, as much as everybody said they've been number 3, Jeff, not number 2, they've been number 3. And the reason, as much as everybody's tried to buy into Texas A&M, we've always asked, what do they look? Who would they really beat? Texas A&M don't have a major win that tells us that you hands down beat like the number 3 team in the country. Texas A&M found they had, when you look at their SEC schedule versus Texas's SEC schedule or Georgia or Alabama and who they played, they got the side where it fared their way, where we don't.
And they're getting that's I think that's Texas's point, is that Texas A&M just had, like, it's still, college football is still sadly boiling down to the schedule. Like BYU does not deserve to be in the playoffs over Texas. They just don't. I've seen the schedule. They just don't. I don't think Indiana's schedule, Ohio State's schedule, wasn't as good as Texas. I mean, it's not their fault. I'm saying I see what Texas fans are saying as far as like our wins are not outweighing the extra loss, and I don't necessarily think that's right, because I've seen Ohio State in the same position. I've seen them be one of the best teams in the country, but they had played a really tough schedule and had to play some teams. And the 2005 is a perfect example. Ohio State loses to Texas at the beginning of the year, and back then it's BCS. Ohio State had no chance to play for a national title and had one of the best teams in the country, but they lost an early game to a good team, and we're done. Now I know it's easier now, but I'm saying I can see I see what you're saying about, Texas fans. They need to calm down a little bit. I do see that. But I guess my overall thing is that it's not good for the sport that we don't care if a team beat good teams and played really good. We do not care.
And you're right. I get that side of the argument. We won't schedule. Okay, take Ohio State off the schedule next year. Don't have them come to Austin. Go call the bottom feeder Big Ten team. Go play Northwestern. Go play Purdue. Go bring them into your house. That's fine. Like, nobody is tripping if you do that. But what I'm saying is you made it like you're in a predicament that everybody else in your conference.
That's fair.
Oklahoma played Michigan week 2. They took a chance. Now, is Oklahoma wasn't expected to be the top team in the SEC. So therefore they're like, well, they played Michigan, not Ohio State. They weren't. Texas was considered the number 1 team running away with Ohio State and Penn State coming into the season. So if Texas was going to play a Big Ten team, it would make sense. Best mano y mano, best versus best, get our lick back. Now, I know it was scheduled a couple years in advance, but I'm just saying. So don't say, well, Oklahoma only played Michigan. That's about their equivalent in the SEC. They played their equivalent in the Big Ten in Michigan, and they won that game. So other teams took chances.
It would be frustrating, though.
I'm not going to play with it. We're going to have Syracuse come to our house.
I agree. But you have to at least understand the frustration of beating playoff teams and not being allowed in the playoffs. Like, you have to at least – I'm saying what you're saying is, hey, tough shit, you lost. I don't know what to tell you. But I can understand the frustration of being like, we beat 3 to 4 playoff teams and had to play against 6, and we don't even get a chance at it. Like, I'm just saying, I understand the frustration.
In an expanded playoff, like my thing is, in an expanded playoff, let me paint this picture right here. So let's say for in the playoff format.
I did not know that you hated Texas. This is hilarious.
It's not even Texas. It's I guess it's more so the SEC, but like let me just paint this for Texas people.
That's fair.
The Dallas Cowboys, right? They essentially have to win out in order to go to the playoffs. Now, over the next few weeks,
you can't compare the NFL though, because it goes by record.
Right,
NFL doesn't count.
But they beat playoff teams,
and it matters because the NFL is totally different. NFL goes by record. Nothing.
But
changes.
It's still, you lost to Florida though. Like, and that's where I just go back to the Ohio State game. Wouldn't have mattered if you wouldn't have lost to Florida. Like, everybody, like it's that happened. They lost to Florida. No, they're not going to not get in because they lost to Ohio State. They're not going to not get in.
I know I'm saying the other side of that is the wins don't matter because they lost to Florida. And I don't know that that's right either. But like, why should Notre Dame get in just because they lost one less game than Texas, but they didn't have beat near the schedule that Texas did? Notre Dame has not beat a playoff team. Am I correct?
I don't think so. Yeah, you're right.
They're not going to have their best wins are going to be Pitt, USC. That's pretty much it. Like, and they're getting all this credit for it. But and if I'm Texas, I'm like, we beat 4 of the teams that are in the playoffs, and you lost to Miami. Like, you got to see that side of it, that they're not right about their argument, but they are correct about, like, it doesn't feel right when you have really now. If with your point about Texas A&M, I agree with, because their schedule isn't as hard as Texas, and they took advantage of that, which is fine. But like,
Yeah, I'm completely against Texas. Like, hold on now. I know we holding weight. Okay, they beat Oklahoma in the Red River rivalry. Cool. They beat Vanderbilt. Sure. We're also talking about Vanderbilt being 10-2 and possibly being out the playoff as well. This might not be a playoff team because Vanderbilt hasn't beat anybody, but we're going to give them a lot of credit for smoking Tennessee. Sure. But we talk about their 3 wins. We say we only focus on the loss column. So let's pick apart. You went into overtime with Kentucky, 16-13 against Kentucky. Bad team.
All right, you win. I give up.
Overtime against Mississippi State. Ole Miss just blew them out amid all distractions with Lane Kiffin. Bad team. You let Arkansas, you were down by 2 touchdowns against Arkansas and had to score 52 points in order to beat Arkansas. You are not as great of a team as you think, because you beat Oklahoma, who played a quarterback, mind you, that played their quarterback that should not have played. He had broke his wrist 2 weeks prior to playing in that game.
Well, we can't start factoring that in because you can do that with every team.
No, but what I'm saying is you're valuing the Oklahoma win like that's the win.
I think you
stepped in 2 weeks.
Texas,
like this is you're
Texas
not
out.
27-10 against University of Texas El Paso, 38-7 against San Jose State, but you only had 17 at halftime. Like, we're not just talking about, yes, you had 3 good wins. Yes, you beat Oklahoma in the Red River rivalry, and it aged well. Oklahoma almost lost to LSU yesterday in the entire conversation.
You can't do that either, though, because once you start doing that, then you got to throw every team out.
What I'm saying
if you're going
is,
to do that, Ohio State hasn't beaten anybody either. I mean, to be honest with you.
And Ohio State hasn't beaten anybody.
Yeah.
But what they haven't done is lost, period. They ain't beat nobody.
You just admitted that it's just the loss column. It's always going to be the loss column.
And maybe you want to say Ohio State's not the best team in the country because they haven't beat nobody. That's fine. But what I do know is they're one of the 12 best teams in the country and they'll make the playoffs, because no matter even a team that doesn't play nobody, you have to, like, because you only want to count their 3 wins. That's where Texas is leaning on 3 games. As opposed to, all right, look at some of your other wins. Overtime against Kentucky. Overtime against Mississippi State. These are teams that are barely bowl eligible. They're going to go play in bowl games that nobody's going to watch. But we have to, because of 3 wins, 1 against Oklahoma. But let's take away the circumstance. Okay, you beat Oklahoma. You beat, who else did you beat? You beat Vanderbilt and you beat A&M. But the conversation around A&M is they're probably not as good as everybody thought, and a lot of people in the SEC predicted that A&M ain't this good, and that's why everybody had Texas winning this game. A lot of money was on Texas. Everybody had Texas. Even the line of the sense of, if this was Ohio State versus Oregon, Ohio State would have been a lot more favored than A&M was favored over Texas. Everything told you it was pointed to a possibility that Texas wins this game. So this not even a surprise that Texas beat A&M. To me, that speaks about what people thought about A&M coming to this game as opposed to what they thought about Texas anyway.
So let's do this. You're totally convinced me. Texas is out. I'm not being totally serious. I'm not even making jokes. I just want to move on to some of the other teams. I think that was the best Texas conversation. I think it's way better than the conversation that they're going to have in the committee room. So I applaud you for
want to put Texas in
you
there.
Absolutely nailed it. I did forget how bad it was, and I'm caught up in the moment.
It was really
so
bad.
Let's do that. But here's the thing. So we know Ohio State, Indiana, Texas A&M, Georgia, Texas Tech. I think we think Texas Tech is in regardless, right? Is there a world?
I think so.
So we'll say they're in. So
I'm convinced.
Oregon, I think Ole Miss are going to leave in regardless of Kiffin. You can't boot that team out.
Even though breaking news while we're
okay.
Kiffin announced that he's leaving.
But I think you can't take Ole Miss out of the playoffs. And hey, Florida State, I hear you. I feel for you.
That was a 14 playoff, though. It's a little bit different.
No, I'm just saying. I hear you. It ain't gonna happen. So anyway, I'm going to count Oklahoma as in the playoffs.
Okay.
And so the 9th team would be Notre Dame, and I think Notre Dame's locked in because of, you said it, the helmet, and they've only got 2 losses, and they've got good looking wins. So basically I've got 9 teams in already. You got the G5 team going to get in, so there's 10, and you got a stupid ACC team is going to get in. There's 11. There's only one spot left. So I'm asking you, if Alabama wins and they take that spot, yes. Georgia's going to get the other one.
Alabama wins, they take that spot.
Alabama wins, it's over. Miami's out, Vanderbilt's out.
And I'm okay, but I'm okay with that. Like, I'm okay with it being that simple.
So here's this scenario. BYU and Alabama win. Who gets left out? Notre Dame or Texas? Or Ole Miss? I don't think Ole Miss, but I'm saying that's at least that's the rest of them are.
If BYU and Alabama
wins and Alabama wins,
who gets left out of
that? Well, it would be like Notre Dame or Oklahoma would be the last at-large teams, because we're all counting on Alabama to lose and BYU to lose, and then we're going to either give it to Alabama's going to get it with 3 losses or possibly Miami. That's really the only 2 teams that can get it. So we just eliminated Texas. You're right. Texas, Vanderbilt are out. I no longer have them in the running. And so
if you ask me, I'm putting Oklahoma. I'd put Oklahoma in over Notre Dame. Now,
Notre Dame could get left out.
But we're sitting here. If we're sitting here at 10-2, but I beat Missouri, I beat Alabama, I beat Tennessee on the road. I played with Ole Miss. Now, it was at home, but I played with Ole Miss. Like, I lost to Texas, but like I beat some. The fact that I beat Alabama,
I think Oklahoma's in. I think Oklahoma is locked in. So now we're down to, let's say, if Alabama loses, and we'll say it's a good-looking game, they don't get embarrassed. Does Alabama get it? We'll say, I'm talking about like a BYU wins, because that's going to wrap up a spot. That's going to waste a spot, but it's going to happen. So now we're going to have 2 Big 12 teams in. Somebody's got to be left out. If Alabama loses to Georgia in a decent fashion, do they take Notre Dame out over them? Do they take Oklahoma out? Or is Alabama just left out with 3 losses because they played a conference championship game? Who right now, I think, without a doubt, without a conference championship game, Alabama's in.
But see, that's where the conversation gets to. This is where my whole point is. We doing all this and not even talking about Texas. Like, no,
you're right. Texas is out. You're totally convinced. Texas can't get in.
Texas was doing all that yelling after beating A&M, but now when you sit back and sip the coffee and have the conversations about what scenarios could paint for the other teams, like now that it's all settled in, all that yelling that Texas was doing.
Yeah, Vanderbilt and Texas are talking. They're just yelling.
But that's my thing. Like, I don't think Vanderbilt has enough wins. Like,
they can't. I'm eliminated. Vanderbilt's eliminated.
And so, I would put Alabama in. Like, I'd take Alabama.
With 3 losses. 3-loss Alabama is in. So then, now if BYU loses, that's it. You're giving the last spot to Alabama. The playoffs are set because you're going to get the group of 5 in the ACC. 2 ACC teams aren't going to make it. So that leaves Miami out. That leaves, of course, Vanderbilt, Texas. That's really the only 3 that would come down to. But I'm telling you, if BYU wins and Alabama loses, now somebody gets booted. Either Notre Dame, Alabama, or Oklahoma cannot make the playoffs if BYU wins.
Or
Texas Tech. Do you think they could boot Texas Tech over Oklahoma?
I think the easier thing to do would be boot Texas Tech and just say that we're not going to have 2 Big 12. Like, it's easier to pile in more SEC than Big 12.
I agree.
But at the same time, like, Texas Tech gets done more wrong than anybody because they're playing
they got to play in a stupid conference championship.
They're playing a team, and that's why I said, I mean, you're part of the conference championship conversation. I fully agree. Like, Texas Tech and BYU will stand behind you strong 100% because, like, if we come Tuesday night, their point is going to be valid because I think we'll just say for the sake of argument, Texas Tech and BYU are both going to be 7-8 come Tuesday night. That means you're telling me tonight, Tuesday night, I am a playoff team at the end of the regular season. The regular season is over. We are now in conference championship weekend. At the end of the regular season, I am a playoff team. I'm sitting at 7. I'm sitting at 8. Every team behind me, more than likely,
it's sitting at home.
The season is over. Like, most of them behind me, if not all of them behind me, unless they're playing in the conference championship, it's sitting.
Alabama's the only one playing that's ranked less than Texas Tech.
And so you're going to tell me that if I play BYU, and it's whatever. We'll see what the playoff. I'm interested to see where everybody's ranked on Tuesday, because obviously that's going to be the most telling to see what you could kind of read into what the committee might be trying to set up for, depending on who's ranked where.
Right.
But if I'm Texas Tech or BYU, they're not 10-2 with the same argument. They're both 11-1. Like they're not. If they were sitting with 10-2, and I'm like, if BYU loses, they don't have the same argument that Alabama does. If they lose, a 10-3 Alabama and a 10-3 BYU doesn't sit the same. But this team is 11-1, a guaranteed lock to be in the playoffs if I don't play in a conference championship game, and if I lose. But to me, the argument is a lot stronger for if BYU loses, because that's twice that you lost to Texas Tech. But you don't have a strong enough win for us not to point to the fact you played a playoff team twice. Same playoff team, but you played them twice and lost. We could justify leaving you out over.
I really can't. I can't find a path for Miami to get in at this point. Like, I think it's just
I think it's really dead.
Unless the only scenario is injury. Alabama takes. I'm not wishing anything. I'm just saying.
But a quarterback
Alabama gets whooped or injured. That would open up a spot. And then if Texas Tech, the same situation, that's the only spot left. And they're not going to. I know it's going to suck. I mean, Miami and Notre Dame fans are going to go at it, but Miami's not getting in over Notre Dame. And do I think that's right? No, I don't. I think something ought to matter because what me and Mo just talked for 15 minutes how the Ohio State game mattered to Texas and the Florida game mattered, and then the committee is going to go, but the game you guys played against each other didn't matter.
And that's what they're gonna if they don't have like a standard formula. They're gonna, if they don't have a standard formula, they're gonna contradict themselves when talking about certain teams, depending on making their argument. And I understand it, but like, when at the end of the day, mano y mano has to matter. Like,
well, how about this though? How about Texas Tech? If they lose, their best win of the season will be the team that just beat them and Utah. Maybe they get left out. I think Texas Tech, if they get handled, could get left out of this.
They could, but their argument to stand on is one of my losses. I beat that same team though. I've already beat them.
Like, yeah, but do we care about that team? How much do they care about BYU is what I'm saying.
They're going to be a playoff team. They're going to be a 12. Like, we can't treat the Big 12 has been solid enough.
Well, then why doesn't here's what I'm saying. If BYU wins and you put Texas Tech in, you got to put Miami in over Notre Dame if you're the committee, because what you just said was head to head mattered.
And I want to go to that point really quick. Is like head to head.
Look at it. Miami's getting shafted.
But head to head has to matter.
Duke's going to be in.
I understand. I get the hypotheticals of like, if we didn't schedule Ohio State, I get those point of Texas's arguments. Then why do we play the game? Blah, blah, blah. There was no point in playing the game. But when we play a team, we got the same record and I beat you. It has to matter. I don't care. I know that I played you week 1 or whatever, and we got one off. And if we played today, maybe you are better than me, but I already played you. There's no, I don't have to argue that point with you. Like, that's my only thing is I get where Miami's coming from because we already played. Texas is playing in the hypothetical land of if we don't schedule Ohio State and we schedule a type of Big Ten team or whatever, they're actually saying FCS because their lack of knowledge, thinking they subbed Northwestern State University out of Manhattan, New York, was they could have played them or the School of the Blind instead of playing Ohio State. No, you had to play another Power 4 conference game that everybody else in your conference did play. You played your conference equivalent in the Big Ten. So let's just leave that out there that you played your conference equivalent. You've been talking tough. Y'all thought Arch was like before that game. Arch was the
why are you back on Texas? Leave them fools. Texas out of this. Texas is out of this.
But okay, so they are out. But it's you play Notre Dame and Miami played. Like, we played on the field. A result happened. You could go back and look. Everybody could go back and look on the ESPN app, the Fox Sports. So to me, at that point, like, what are you really evaluating if when two teams play each other at the end of the day, it's not going to matter?
Okay, let's talk about I love getting into this. I hope we can do a show later in the week or maybe next week, I guess. But listen to this shit. Like, this is Notre Dame. Okay. So they start off the season. They lose to Miami, the team that is below them in the rankings. They lose to Texas A&M, 2 losses. And again, I'm just saying those were losses. The games were close. I understand. I don't care. And then we got Purdue, Arkansas, Boise, North Carolina State, Boston College, USC, Navy, Pittsburgh, Syracuse, and Stanford. Now, how can they possibly say that with 2 losses, if that's any kind of schedule? And yet they're ranked over the team that beat them on a field and equal conditions, if you ask me, because they both basically had kind of new quarterbacks, new rosters and everything. I think that was a pretty even game, and they beat them. And they don't, their best win is Pittsburgh, who also Miami beat. So there's even common opponents. Like, I do not know how they're going to tell Miami that they can't get in over a team that they beat. I'm totally seeing Miami's argument at this point.
I do see, and I 100% see Miami's argument for the simple fact, like, why play Notre Dame at all? Like, because we played them and we beat them
and won.
Like, that's when
you just lost later than Notre Dame. The only problem Miami has, they lost later than Notre Dame. That's it.
Yeah, because it's not like we're Texas, where like that loss is playing into a factor of why we're not making the playoffs, which is why they make their Ohio State argument. We won and it doesn't matter. Like, we beat them head to head. We're both 10-2. We both ain't really beat nobody. Like, I beat you. You are my strong win. Everybody's like, oh, is Miami going to live off the Notre Dame win? They should live off the Notre Dame win in any argument against Notre Dame. I'm not saying that their strongest win being Notre Dame and them losing to Louisville, losing to SMU is a case against a 10-3 Alabama if they lose in the SEC championship. No. Like, I'm not saying it. But what I'm saying is, resume for resume, if Miami ain't beat nobody and Notre Dame ain't beat nobody, Miami beat Notre Dame.
Miami beat Notre Dame.
So we're both 10-2. Neither one of us have played a schedule even worth talking about. Yes, I lost to Louisville. Yes, I lost to SMU, but I beat you. You lost to us in Texas A&M, but now you're saying my loss column looks better than yours, but I'm one of the lost. So because I lost to 2 other teams different than what you lost to, I don't get in.
Lost to them later. That's it. They lost to them later in the year.
But I will say, like, Notre Dame's caliber of losing to Miami and A&M isn't the same as losing to Louisville and SMU. But I beat you. Like,
well, I don't agree with that, but that's not how they do it, and we know that. That's my problem, is that they just look at the number of losses. Like, if you want to look at, I think Notre Dame right now is a better team than Miami, like slightly. And I did see the losses, and I understand that they could have easily beat Texas A&M. I understand they could have beat Miami. I see all that, but the committee doesn't do it that way. We just talked about how right now, if you got 3 losses, you're out. We talked about how Alabama might get screwed for playing an extra game. So you can't turn around and say, like, I just don't like how they're going to talk out around both sides of their mouth to get Notre Dame in instead of Miami. And again, especially if like Alabama wins or BYU wins, Miami is out. And Notre Dame's going to be sitting there with a chance to win a national title, and a team that beat them won't. And I know that you have upsets, because I understand what somebody would say. They're like, well, SMU beat Miami and they don't have a chance to win it either. I get what you're saying. There's no perfect world, but if it's head to head against 2 teams that you're really close to, I think Miami's getting shafted.
Yeah, I think so too. I definitely 100% agree. And like, I know we're going to have more conversation as far as once the playoff, once the playoff bracket and the playoff rankings come out on Tuesday, then obviously we got conference championship weekend coming up. Just real quick though, like while we were doing this show, while we were talking, while I was going on my rant about Texas and everything like that, I guess I do have a hate for Texas.
You dislike Texas more than I dislike running backs. And
I just think it's the SEC involvement with Texas.
But you got to understand, we would be doing that. We did the same thing last year, but we got in. We lost to a terrible Michigan team, and we're like, that shouldn't matter. Let us in. And we were right. But like, as an Ohio State fan, I've made this argument too. Like, Texas has to like make the argument for their team, but you're right about everything.
It doesn't mean like, and it doesn't mean anybody who had the rebuttal against us being 10-2 and losing to Michigan. Yeah. Like, we were making that argument for our team, but I would say everybody on, like, we just ended up being right because Ohio State went and won the national championship. But like, if Ohio State beat Tennessee and then got thumped by Oregon, everybody will be like, see, you really weren't that good. You barely beat Tennessee or whatever. Like, Tennessee's not that good either. And so,
well, like, now that I look at it, there's just not room for Texas in this bracket. I was wasting my time even thinking that.
There's so many teams that didn't handle business in other games, and that you have so many 2-loss teams. That's why a 3-loss team can't really get in, because you got.
So what I don't like, my last point about this, and I know we're going to move on to some the Kiffin stuff. My last point about this is, BYU is getting everybody. The one thing they say about BYU is like, they're a 1-loss team. They're a 1-loss team. But If you're going to say that, then that means you're not taking into account who you play, how you play, schedule. All you care about is you have one loss. So again, it all goes back to, if you're going to do that, I don't know why these teams, I don't know why Ohio State wouldn't join the MAC and just be like, we're going to the playoffs every year. You know what I mean? And then see what happens. So that's all I'm saying. Like, it's not about agreeing with Texas fans or whatever. I'm just saying I see the frustration of the unbalance, in college football as far as ACC Big 12 compared to SEC Big 10 is not even playing field right now. So, and I'm curious to see who gets screwed because of it.
Yeah, and I get that. And some people will be like, well, expand to 16, sure. And then when we get 16.
No, if we expand to 16 and get rid of the conference championship games, it's perfect. I've already figured this out.
Then it'll be perfect. But some people, the thing is, you expand to 16 and people are still going to be arguing for 17, 18.
That's awesome, though. We're still going to be doing a show with 16 teams in. No, if next week was a wild card game, you wouldn't think that it was too many teams, because right now you know what that would eliminate, Domo? We wouldn't have Duke with a possibility of going to the playoffs if we expand to 16 and get rid of conference championship games. Because we should not, we talked about the G5 and you're correct about everything you say about it. But when you really look at the teams who put these teams together and work all year, there's going to be at least 2 teams in this playoffs that have no business being in there compared to teams that get left out that were really, really good. And that's, I know that's fun, but it's really not. Well, so if you go to 16, let them play wild card weekend, narrow it down to your 8 or 12 or whatever, and it's going to be awesome.
Well, having that conversation too as well, like before, we'll talk about Lane real quick before we close out, but having that conversation, like I don't feel, when I made that argument for G5, like my argument for G5 still stands, but it's always all circumstantial. Like now to me, if Tulane wins next week, I don't think, like, I get G5 automatically gets one, so it's probably going to be them, but they're going to be losing their head coach, and they got 2 losses. Like, and to me, that matters. Like, Tulane is 10-2. Now, they play North Texas. Now, I know North Texas head coach took the job at Oklahoma State. He's also, if they were to make the playoffs, he's going to coach through the conference championship. He's already announced, like, he's going to coach through it. I'm sure Tulane's head coach would, too. But, like, North Texas
might not be allowed.
Well, North Texas has
one. My point is, though, like, we did all that argument for the G5 deserving all this shit, and now all they are is the best teams are just coaching clinics, and they're going to get hired away. So I no longer am on the G5 side of it, because I'm like, if your coaches are just going to leave in December, then why am I making the argument that you ought to be in the playoffs?
Like, that does make me, like, if it's just going to be the hunting grounds. But at the same time, like, the odd thing about the G5 and everything with this year is we usually don't go into a December, a bowl season with this many open jobs at these major Power 5 jobs. Like Michigan State just fired their coach. LSU getting a new head coach.
This is going to happen a lot because you, just like the NFL, you got to fire early because next year's recruiting schedule and everything starts before the playoffs are over.
Right.
So now this is going to happen every year. You're not going to wait for a bowl game or after a season to fire a coach. You got to get, like, Lane Kiffin, I assume you're going to talk about him in a minute, has to be recruiting for his next season right now because the portal opens in a couple weeks?
Yeah, I think it opens in like a week and a half or 2 weeks. And that's so Lane Kiffin, for what we keep hinting towards, he it's been a fiasco all weekend, especially since, Ole Miss and Mississippi State played Friday. So at the conclusion of that game, Ole Miss finishing their season 11-1. This has been the topic of conversation, kind of overtaken rivalry weekend. And we finally have, it's at its finale. Lane Kiffin took the job at LSU, kind of what everybody saw coming. Now, with Ole Miss being 11-1 and having a shot of going to the college football playoffs and really looking like a team that could beat, they're one of those teams. I'm not saying they can win a national championship, but they are an 11-1 team that could beat anybody on any Saturday. Like, I don't think there's a team that Ole Miss was staring across in this playoff field and like, this is a team we don't want to match up with. Obviously, like, sure, people might say, like, I'd rather not play Ohio State, but understanding when trying to play a national championship, to play for a national championship, you'll probably have to play them eventually. Ole Miss is one of those teams. I'm like, they get in, they have a shot. They don't choke, they don't lose to Mississippi State, and they get themselves in at 11-1. This is a team I felt like all year had a shot. And the question will be, do they still get their shot? And I'd love to see, it's hard to keep an 11-1 Ole Miss. I think what the questions of this Lane Kiffin going to LSU over the next couple of days and what the committee is, can they have what their staff is going to look like heading into the playoffs? Can they have basically on paper, this is what our staff is going to be from head coach to coordinator and everything, to basically have the committee understand like their staff isn't all leaving and blowing up. But Lane Kiffin going to LSU is huge for about a million different reasons, but it's one of, if not the best job in America. I think it's LSU, Ohio State is pretty much the two best jobs in America. I think no matter who's at the helm, those two schools will never have a problem getting talent. Those two schools, it seems like those are the two schools whose brand literally sells itself. Like literally, I literally, LSU and Ohio State just simply sell itself. And it's not saying that being an Ohio State fan, I don't think it's really ever going to matter who's the head coach at Ohio State, as long as all situations are go. Talent is not going to be a thing that you're going to be longing for at LSU or at Ohio State. And so I think with Lane Kiffin, like this is, they might have a little bit more money over there at LSU than they do at Ole Miss. I think he's going to be able to get a little bit more talent in there, and he's going to have a lot more local talent. What Lane Kiffin's going to need to focus on is keeping those Louisiana kids in Louisiana. You look at that 2019 team, that's what Coach Ed Orgeron did really well, was keep all those Louisiana kids in Louisiana. Had them at LSU.
I mean, he did get one Ohio kid that was pretty good.
Well, yeah, he did.
They won that national championship because of Ohio kids, not because of Louisiana
he did get the quarterback. Like all the other talent around, like
Eastern Ohio won that championship.
But just being able to keep the talent in the building, like being able to keep the talent in state, and that's something that Brian Kelly wasn't able to do well. This is something I think the young kids love a coach like Lane Kiffin. I think somebody with his personality, I think somebody with his charisma in today's age of college football is perfect, especially for the job at LSU. So I expect LSU, after having a year where they fired Brian Kelly, I expect them to turn it around pretty fast. I don't expect year one to be a building block year for Lane Kiffin, as opposed to it just might be how much talent can I get in the next couple weeks, next month or so. And I think it'll be a lot. And after that, it'll just kind of be, what can I do? Year one, what can I maximize with all this talent?
Here's the problem. And we've been waiting for this shoe to drop for about 3 years now, and it's finally going to happen. We've got a playoff team that if they win the first round, and they could possibly win the second round, they're going to lose probably half their team during the playoffs. We've never seen that, and it's going to happen. Lane Kiffin is going to take a major portion of this team. And when I say major, like starters, more than likely quarterback, all this he's going to take with him from a playoff team, because the portal window starts January 2nd. So the second round of the playoffs, is January 1st, obviously. So let's say Ole Miss wins. Half their team that's on the playoff roster is going to leave. So
heading into a semifinal,
are we going to let that happen, or is the committee going to put them in and hope they lose, or is the committee going to put them in and say, let's see what happens? Because it will be messed up if Ole Miss goes to the playoffs and then half their team leaves in the portal. That will be a screwed up situation, because college football doesn't deserve that either, and it's messy. Now the college football has a big problem with their schedule in their hands that they got to figure this out. I think they did this to kind of artificially hamper the good teams. You know what I mean? Like Ohio State, let's say Ohio State gets to the semifinals again. They're going to miss the portal window. And I think it's intentional that they want the really good teams to miss that window, because it's going to maybe slow down some of the influx of talent. But I don't know if they expected a playoff coach to leave. So it's going to be really weird when Ole Miss, or Ole Miss, are they going to play bad and lose because they don't have the coach or whatever? But that's the most interesting part about this Lane Kiffin thing, is that he has a playoff team and walked away from it.
Yeah, like, and I understand, like,
he's taking his coaching staff.
Yeah, well, that's the thing we got to see. Like, we got to see who leaves with them and who doesn't. That, obviously, while sitting here recording, there's not all the details in that, so we don't know who's going with them and who's staying.
I've heard everybody is leaving.
I did hear everybody important, in a sense, like everybody that's important for the.
Are we just going to say the committee? Are we going to? So now we'll know Tuesday night. What do you think happens? Do they leave Ole Miss out of this? Because if they leave them there Tuesday night, then they got to leave Ole Miss in. They can't take them out next Sunday. So do you think that they drop Ole Miss out of the rankings Tuesday night, or do you think they're putting them in the playoffs regardless? Because it is weird.
I think I don't think you can, unless like over the next 24, unless before Tuesday, like not only did Lane Kiffin leave, but the entire staff is gone. All the players are already with their intentions of entering the portal, where this team is going to blow up.
But the players aren't going to tell anybody. That's the thing. They're not going to say anything yet.
And they don't have to. And that's
no, they shouldn't.
But here's my thing. Like people have jobs. There are sports reporters, there are insiders, there are people that have access to conversations within the building. That all I'm saying is it may not be public knowledge, but I think behind closed doors, the questions.
So should they make that public though?
Answered from Ole Miss. They're going to have the information that they need in order to make.
But shouldn't they tell us as college football fans?
I think if they get the information prior to Tuesday's show and they make the decision, I think when the chairman or whoever sits on that and answers, the questions from the panel from the college football playoff show after, I think if he gets asked, he has to answer, and I think he has to answer. But if it's just people understand and nobody really, they're going to inquire about it. Desmond Howard or Herb Street or somebody going to ask the question to be asked. Like, you guys put Ole Miss at 13. Does this? And because from what we were told from our sources, half of the team is gone. Most of the staff is gone. They got on the plane with Lane. Like, yes, but I don't think they're required to reveal that information prior to putting the
So is this
out. But I think if they got that information and they made their move, put them at 13 based on that information, then I think you do owe the public. I think you owe the fan base of Ole Miss. I think you owe the fan base of college football and the public a conversation of, if I'm going to ask, hey, why did you put Ole Miss at 13? How much of the Lane Kiffin going to LSU impacted y'all basically putting them out of the playoffs?
Well, because here's the thing. It's not like Ole Miss isn't number 2. Like, they only have to drop them to get them out. Ole Miss is just above Oklahoma. So to justify kicking them out, you only got to move them 2 spots and they're out.
Yeah, but you're taking the chance of a bunch of 2 and 3 lost teams.
No, all it would do is put like a losing SEC. It would put Alabama in, or it'd put maybe Miami in at best.
But what if Ole Miss, like, what if they're hiring within and everybody?
No, I don't think Ole Miss should be left out. I'm saying the committee doesn't have to. They're not dropping the number 1 team out. Ole Miss is going to be a 8-9 seed anyway. 7 seed.
They are still. They're 11-1. Like,
no. I don't think they should be left out. But I'm saying
they're locked in.
They don't have to drop them to 13, like you said. They only have to drop them to about 9 to justify leaving them out. Like, they could do this sneaky. Like, Tuesday night, they could drop them to 8 or 9, and then Alabama plays good, and they're like, we jumped them up. That's all they got to do to justify this. They don't even have to. They don't have to just say it's because of Lane leaving. They can weasel their way out of this. I will say that this is. I understand he had to do it at this point. This is definitely one of the most messed up things I've ever seen a coach do to a team.
Yeah, I mean, because you legitimately had a shot. Like, this is an 11-1 team that wasn't going to sneak in the playoffs. They were pretty much a lock to get in the playoffs. Like, you had a legitimate shot to compete for a national championship at Ole Miss. Now, here's my thing. My only final thought is, like, it seems to me like, having been on the internet throughout the day, and obviously we kind of knew, like, if you've been on Twitter or whatever and you follow who I follow or whatever it may be, like, you kind of knew Lane was going to LSU. It was only a matter of time. But for a guy to have repaired his reputation at Ole Miss, essentially, like, he became a national, like, darling of a coach.
Yep.
Because of his time at Ole Miss and him, they just did a piece on him and how him and that time he spent with Nick Saban is what revived his career, and he was able to bounce back. He became a national media darling, and in a matter of 48 hours, Jeff, like, the ties turn. Like, because he makes this decision, because it gets out that he's probably going to make this decision, because everybody else is having conversations for him, like, he became the villain, and now he's wrong because of the timing. And part of the timing is just how school lines up with college football. And Nick Saban said to fix that, the school calendar needs to line up with the college football calendar. Second semester shouldn't start till after the national championship is played, so that we could get the portal open and get these kids enrolled. Just don't start, the second semester until February. And
no, they had it. No, it was fine before when they had 2 portals. This wasn't a problem. They eliminated the spring portal this year, and that's what has caused this. They could have left the spring portal, which is when most of the players went the first big year of the portal, like when Ohio State built their team and Ole Miss built their team that didn't go to the playoffs. That was definitely a shot across the bow at Ole Miss fans. Like when Ohio State built their championship team and Ole Miss built their team that didn't go to the playoffs was in the spring. So like they didn't have to, they could have just left it in the spring portal and got rid of the one during the playoffs. I specifically think they did this on purpose to screw teams like Ole Miss and Ohio State and all these teams on purpose. And I stand by that. So this didn't have to be a situation. They could have just said spring portal, players leave, go to spring ball, and you're done. They didn't have to do a January portal.
Yeah, and that makes sense. But it's just like with Lane at LSU now, like to me, the one question that is who does he bring for like from Ole Miss, but like how does that impact people who would
how sad is Bryce Underwood right now? I know he's rich and sad.
Is he that sad though? Because like unless he's in a deal, and I said because here's the thing: the first thing everybody's pointing to is Lane can go get his quarterback by getting Bryce Underwood. Bryce Underwood was going to LSU prior to Michigan putting the offer on the table. Like he went to Michigan because of money. We all know that. Here's my thing: everybody because it's so easy to get into the transfer portal, this, that, and the other. I said, yeah, but I'm sorry. I don't think a loudmouth, good businessman like Dave Portnoy put $2, $3, or $4 million towards getting a Michigan quarterback while also just willingly taking the chance of knowing that he could just hit the portal the following year. There could be some language in some of these NIL deals, whether people like it or not, where you sign this deal, you're here. Like that. So Bryce Underwood may not be able to hit the portal. I'm not saying that that's a fact. I'm just saying in my eyes, if I'm giving somebody $12 million, even if it's a year by year basis.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Here's the caveat. You really, no matter what you do, you really can't do that because, again, Jeff has said it for 4 freaking years. These players are not actually paid. They're not employees. So Bryce Underwood, the NIL, is not linked to Michigan. And that's where the problem. I'm just using him as an example.
Right.
Any of these players aren't technically linked to a team through NIL. NIL is a separate thing altogether. And we know that that's, they're not using it that way, but right now it is. And so there's no contracts. There's nothing tying anybody to anywhere. Anybody can leave. If he might be giving up millions. I'm not saying that, but you can't say Coca-Cola is going to stop paying you if you stop playing for like those. You can't tie someone to a school. You can take money away or whatever, however you want to do it, but there is no tie between the school and NIL. Like Reichert Ford can't make somebody stay at Ohio State.
Right. And so because to me, I think Bryce Underwood.
Schools need to start paying the players. Just start paying them.
Yeah, just start paying them. And I think Bryce Underwood would be the easiest answer of like, I'm going to go get the quarterback that wanted to be at LSU. I think quarterbacks be fairly successful in it's a quarterback friendly offense, a very offensive minded head coach. Like if I'm Bryce Underwood, I'm out of Michigan after that result.
I would say that, but I think the only difference is I honestly think that could happen, except for I think Lane brings Chambliss with him.
Yeah, I think that's a possibility of bringing him with him. But if Bryce Underwood was to make a call and be like, damn the money, like I ain't really like
he's gonna get money.
Like, but I also think like maybe he was able to be bought because he was able to be bought. This was a hometown kid that had told everybody, I'm not going to Michigan. They don't develop quarterbacks. Like he's being from Michigan. Like he said, I'm not going to Michigan because they don't develop quarterbacks, and went to LSU and went to go play for Brian Kelly and LSU. And he really wanted to play for LSU. Maybe he wasn't feeling Brian Kelly like that. And that's why Michigan was able to come in with
I think Lane gets him there. I'm just going to predict it.
You can't turn that money down. Like I don't really like Brian Kelly. I want to go to LSU, but shoot, for $12 million, I definitely go to Michigan. It's the crib. I'm from Michigan, where now I think he could go back. Man, this is a great head coach, probably the perfect type of head coach I need for my development to be an NFL quarterback. You're looking at Jackson Dart in the simplest form right now. Anyway, you just look at what Jackson Dart is doing in the NFL, and you, Bryce Underwood, you like, man, I could have 2 years of that going to the school I originally wanted to go to in the first place, playing for probably the perfect type of coach for me to play for and develop under going to the NFL. So I would be very surprised if Bryce Underwood was not at LSU.
I think Lane is going to put together.
I'd be surprised.
I'll say straight up. I hate Ole Miss, so I don't really care that Lane's doing it to him. Whether I agree it's screwed up or not, it just doesn't matter to me. He's going to put a squad on the field next year. LSU is good right now because just you said it. This world benefits Lane Kiffin so much. He's going to have a squad put together. He put a squad together at Ole Miss. He's going to do it at LSU.
Yeah. Like, and I just now the pressure antes though, like, listen, BK's gone because he didn't even look like he had a glimpse of getting this team to a national championship. Where the three other coaches prior to won a national championship.
Yeah, but Kelly wasn't the personnel guy. Kelly's
right, I'm just saying
Lane knows what
I think
good
Lane
quarterback.
He'll restore order and he'll be with coach. I'd be surprised if Lane wasn't able to get at least to a national championship at LSU. Like I'd be very well surprised if
LSU's guaranteed going to the playoffs next year. And I can't wait to see who
they might win the SEC as well.
And here's the thing: Chambliss is pretty good. And Lane might just go get whoever.
Yeah, like he might get whatever quarterback he wants, and like, hey, he tells LSU like when I'm coming, like this is who I got my guy on. And look, I understand you might think he feels happy at whatchamacallit until you say like, man, offer that guy $3 million a year, like. And we'll get him
like
over
you
here.
said, to play in LSU and to play under, in those type of games and if you're like you mentioned, if you're good at LSU, everybody in the country knows you're good.
Yeah, exactly.
You're a legend. Joe Burrow is a legend for one season at LSU. Will never be forgotten.
Yeah, like literally put together, arguably the greatest season a college quarterback ever put together. But Jeff, I know there's so much more we can have, but we're going to cut it right here. Nothing better than to have crapped on the SEC a little bit, big up and praise our, Ohio State Buckeyes for finishing the regular season 12-0 and beating Michigan. That's obviously a big deal, but I appreciate everybody for tuning in. I appreciate everybody for listening. Make sure you check out any other podcast that I have. Make sure you go check out Jeff at Jeff Needs Sports. Check out anything that he has coming up. Jeff, do you have anything special coming up?
I know I'll be on Locked On Buckeyes for the Big Ten Championship pregame. That'll be out Friday with Jay Stevens. So everybody go check that out. And I'm going to try and squeeze a show of my own in. But y'all keep me so busy, and I love it that I don't have a lot of time to do a show. But I really don't need to. We just did a great show. I'm as good with anybody listening to this as they listen to mine. So we're still a team.
Yeah, well, I appreciate everybody for tuning in. I appreciate everybody for listening. I hope everybody had a wonderful Thanksgiving, and I hope everybody has a wonderful time preparing for the holiday that is Christmas, which is my favorite holiday. So everybody be well, be safe, shop safely, and be kind to everyone and greet everyone with a smile. And we will catch you on the next episode of the Coach Mo Murphy Podcast.